Earlier representations, the Hosgri Fault is, in fact, connected to the San Simeon Fault, capable of producing a 171-kilometer rupture. The Hosgri also connects to the powerful Shoreline Fault, introducing the potential for a magnitude 7.3 just 600 meters from the plant and 300 meters from the intakes, a magnitude 7.3. There are now 5 earthquake hazards that can produce shaking greater than an earthquake on the Hosgri Fault, the same fault which the utility claimed was the controlling fault and the largest threat to Diablo. Despite these astonishing findings, the utility continues to argue the plant is now safe, and in fact, now it is safer than ever before. How is that done? They've concluded this by developing a new, less conservative methodology that reduces shaking estimates from all nearby earthquakes. The information about these new faults is so compelling that it led Dr. Michael Peck, the NRC Senior Resident Inspector at Diablo, to issue an official dissenting professional opinion stating these earthquakes could, in fact, by the utility's own estimates, produce shaking stronger than permitted under the current license. He called for closure of the plant until the utility could prove that the reactors could withstand potential earthquakes on these faults, yet his concerns were silenced by the NRC. For the NRC to de facto accept this new, less conservative methodology, which reduces estimated shaking from these nearby earthquakes, would be a stunning delegation of authority to the utility and NRC staff that would result in dramatically weakened seismic safety standards at the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant. This passive erosion of regulatory oversight is exactly what led to the Fukushima disaster, the Deepwater Horizon disaster, and the recent unexpected shutdown of California's San Onofre nuclear generating station, all of which were foreseeable and avoidable. In fact, just this year, the Office of Inspector General of the NRC reviewed the factors leading to the shutdown of San Onofre and chastised the NRC for allowing the utility to sidestep the license amendment process. So the question before us today is, how will the NRC respond to these new revelations about new earthquake threats that surround Diablo? Will they repeat the mistakes of Japan's Nuclear Regulation Authority and rely upon the utility's representations? Will they give the utility a pass around the license amendment process, which is exactly what happened at San Onofre? Or will they recognize the dangers of passive regulatory oversight and insist on higher seismic safety standards? You heard in the prior testimony, the commissioners testified to the complex and convoluted licensing history at Diablo. But we now know much more about seismic issues than when Diablo was licensed. Therefore, the NRC has a responsibility to the public to define updated seismic standards through a formal license amendment process that protects the public interest. This process ensures a robust, independent setting where the best technical arguments can be made in public rather than behind closed doors between the utility and NRC staff. I'd like to use this opportunity to urge a license amendment process for Diablo in the light of these new earthquake threats. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator. And Doctor? I don't know which one trumps which one, but we'll call you Senator Doctor. Could you also confirm that ever since the Hosgri Fault was first discovered, to your knowledge, the NRC has never required PG&E to prove that the reactor's safety systems could withstand such a severe earthquake, using the conservative safety assumptions that NRC is supposed to use?
I would say that's accurate. And
put on your mic, please.
I would say that's accurate, and I would probably go further. The technical methodologies that were employed during the licensing process to calculate ground motion from a particular earthquake was included in the deliberations of the NRC and was part of establishing standards. What's transpired over the past years and has accelerated during the last 5 years is that with each progressive discovery of a new seismic threat, the calculations of shaking from any earthquake has systematically gone down, so that now all these earthquake threats that have been identified are calculated to produce more shaking than that worst case Hosgri. But all of the shaking from all those scenarios has markedly come down to ensure the ability to say that the plant is safe. So whereas previously the debate was, do these earthquake faults exist? How large are they? And how close are they to the plant? Previously, that was the debate. And pursuant to the legislation that Governor Schwarzenegger signed, the research was performed using advanced geophysical methods that was answered definitively. And suddenly the utility has changed this argument to, yes, that's fine, they exist, but the methodologies we historically used overestimated shaking, so let's just reduce the shaking from all these faults and declare ourselves to be compliant with the license. Which is why I feel it's so important to have a rigorous license amendment process, because if they got it wrong, the consequences would be catastrophic. And yes, for the state of California, yes, for the nuclear industry, but more importantly, and frankly, for my family. We live within 10 kilometers of that plant, and I brought this, which my daughter gave me, who every night sleeps by that plant.
I hear.
And this is not a technical argument. This is an argument about safety for the public.
Absolutely. That's what I said to the 4 commissioners, that they have to go back and read why we set them up, the NRC. And I want to really compliment you for your work in the state legislature, because the facts, the new facts that came to light on this earthquake are critical. But it's unbelievable. You just can't manipulate like that. This is shocking. This is, in my view, unethical. This is dangerous. And I just hope that what comes out of this today via the media, who I hope will hear this point, is that we have new information about these earthquake faults. Mm-hmm. And an inspector came in from the NRC and said PG&E is not operating Diablo Canyon in compliance with its license requirements because of these faults. And he said the reactor should be shut down until PG&E comes back into compliance. So I want to ask the 3 of you a yes or a no, and hope you'll be able to do that. Do you think that NRC's decision to allow PG&E to study its seismic vulnerabilities for as many as 4 more years before any safety upgrades are required can substitute for NRC's responsibility to ensure that licensees comply with the terms of their operating license? In other words, it's kind of a long question. They say you've got 4 more years before you have to make any upgrades, as opposed to ensuring that they make them sooner. Would you say now or 4 years?
Now. The earthquake may not wait 4 years.
Good point.
We are very familiar with paralysis by analysis, and the threat now is unequivocally so great as a result of these new studies that action is required immediately.
Doctor, do you have a final thought?
Yeah, well, I'd make one quick observation that although Fukushima is often used as the test case around which we hold this conversation, it's not the only earthquake which has caused the shutdown of a nuclear power plant. In 2007, Japan had an earthquake, a much smaller earthquake, even a relatively modest-sized earthquake compared to what we're discussing, that hit the west coast of Japan and knocked out the largest nuclear power plant in the world, the KKPN plant. And just by way of scale, and I was serving on the California Seismic Safety Commission at the time, so I had access to much of the data that was shown that has never seen public purview. That this earthquake was only a magnitude 6.6. Let's put this in context. A 6.6 offshore earthquake. We're talking about a 7.3. Mm-hmm. A 6.6 earthquake located 19 kilometers from this plant knocked it out of commission and caused very serious damage and fires. 19 kilometers. So in terms of energy release, the energy release from that earthquake was 1/30th the energy that would be released from the earthquake we're now discussing. Mm-hmm. And it was 30 times further away. Mm-hmm. So, and it knocked out that plant. So to argue that it would take a tsunami to take out a nuclear power plant is not supported by the facts.
hear
Yes,
you.
it is, Sam. Unfortunately, I have to disagree with you on this one. There was no damage to any of the safety-related equipment in
Mr.
that plant.
Pietrangelo,
That
talk
was
to me.
an.
Talk to
I'm
me.
sorry.
Don't talk to Sam.
Well,
Talk to
I
me.
want to, because I tremendously respect him for his.
I understand you respect him, but talk to me. It's a
Okay.
hearing, and I'd like you to address the chair.
Thank you.
Please. All right.
Yeah, there was a transformer fire at the Kashiwazaki, Korea site, okay? It didn't knock out the power plant. There was no release to the public. There was no safety-related structure systems or components that were damaged by that earthquake. In fact, let's go back to the Tohoku earthquake that did cause the tsunami at Fukushima. The Onagawa plant is much closer to where that plant occurred. There were walkdowns done of the Onagawa plant after the Tohoku earthquake, and like Kashiwazaki, Korea, no damage to any safety-related structure systems or components at that plant. So we have actual operating experience for beyond design basis earthquakes where no safety-related structures are being damaged. I'm not trying to say that we don't study the new information. In fact, I think this is to your point, Chairman Boxer. The licensing basis of a plant does change over time, and there is new information that's brought to the table that has to be evaluated for its safety significance and then acted upon. And there's a process for doing that. Mr. Hirsch may not like the process very much, but it's a very
No, I
disciplined
think
process
Mr.
that the
Hirsch likes
NRC
the
has,
process. He
and that you
doesn't
have
like the
oversight
result.
over
He
to
doesn't, yeah.
determine whether new
Yeah.
requirements
I mean,
are necessary.
I just don't think you're being fair. There's a process, and there's the integrity of the process. Those are two different things. You have a process where an inspector said about Diablo, it's in violation of its license. It either needs to be upgraded or it has to, the operation has to be suspended until it's upgraded. So I don't think it's fair to say that I don't like the process. I just want a fair process that is not a process that results from too cozy a relationship with the industry. Because in my mind, and I've been around a long time, the industry is better served, as is everybody else, when safety is the mission. Because look what happened after Fukushima. Not a good thing for the nuclear industry. It's not good. And you can go through all of the, I never heard someone sort of try to minimize earthquakes. But anyway, Dr. Blakesley, you had some disagreement with his
I do. I think the
criticism, so
parsing
go
of the
ahead.
answer was very telling about
The parsing of his answer?
The parsing of the answer was very telling about what was and wasn't damaged, and he identified certain safety elements that were not damaged. But if you actually looked at the photographs, you can see that the foundation of the nuclear power plant settled in a manner that ruptured the water mains that was there to provide firefighting capability. And through luck, that transformer fire did not extend to produce the kind of worst-case scenario we saw at Fukushima. But let me say, they also had a safety building which was designed for just that purpose. So when the teams of operators ran to get to the safety building, the earthquake had damaged the door so it couldn't be opened. They could not get into the building to implement their safety procedures that were inside that building. And when the local fire department came racing to the site because of the alarm, the earthquake had caused sufficient separation of grade and the road. They could not get to the facility using the road. And the nuclear power plant was knocked out of commission for years, or many reactors were. Those are facts.
They weren't knocked out by the earthquake, Dr. Blakesley. They were not allowed to operate.
I wonder why they weren't allowed to operate.
Right. Again, the roads in the town of Kashiwazaki, Korea are not safety related.
You know, you two can take this outside. My interest, but my interest here, you know, is not in Korea, is not, it's about my state. And 500,000 people, one of them sitting in front of me, who's living in a circumstance where if I don't do my job and NRC doesn't do its job,